Business Connections Live, the UK's leading online business channel. This is Business Connections Live with Steve Hyland.
Hello there and welcome to Business Connections Live, the program for entrepreneurs, SMEs and business owners. Now on today's show we're going to be talking about what the triggering of Article 50 means for business. We read about it on a daily basis in our newspapers, but what does it truly mean for all of us? Is there a lot of puff out there? And there's a lot of rubbish being spoken about what the meaning of Article 50 will mean to you, an SME owner or a solopreneur. What does Article 50 really mean and what are going to be the implications in the future? Joining me in the studio today is Christian Barjaram. Have I got that right?
It's Bjornrum, but yes, that's right.
But it's close enough, isn't it? You're happy with that. Christian, it's lovely to have you with us today. Christian is a partner with EBL Miller Rosenfeld, who actually specialise, don't they, in European law and European trade law?
Yes, well, we have some offices in Germany, France, and offices here in the UK as well, of course. So it's very relevant with the Brexit for us.
Well, by your name alone, it's quite obvious that you're not native of these isles.
That's right.
You're from Sweden.
Sweden originally, yes.
You've been here for how long?
I've been here now for 17 years.
And what do you specialise in?
So I'm a general corporate commercial lawyer. So I'm a solicitor, UK qualified, and typically help SMEs with their terms and conditions and their acquisitions and sales.
Your industry at the moment must be rubbing their hands together with absolute glee.
Yes.
Is that true? Are you out in the champagne every night for every announcement?
Unfortunately not. Unfortunately not. But you're right. I mean, there's a lot of hoo-ha out there, a lot of talk about what's going to happen. People are panicking, I think, a little bit, thinking about what legal implications this is going to have for their business, of course. At the moment, I think there's actually not a lot one can do with regards to the actual legal side of it. It's more preparing for when Brexit actually happens.
And why is that, do you think? Because obviously Theresa May at the moment, she is saying that Brexit means Brexit and she's talking about a hard Brexit. We're using all these descriptive words to describe a process that we're going to go into. We've got different sides of the political elite who are saying, well, actually the Brexit vote, the referendum that we had, it's really only an indication, so let's vote again. So we then find ourselves in the Irish syndrome where we keep voting until the political elite get the answer that they want.
Exactly.
Do you think that's going to happen here?
I think at the moment, there's a lot of political discussions. There are legal implications as well, as we might have seen in media, that there's obviously a case at the moment whether we need an act of Parliament in order to trigger Article 50 or not. I'm sure there's going to be appealed as well. At the moment they are coming up with a decision, probably another 2 weeks' time, and I'm sure that decision is going to be appealed no matter what. But I think that's really what's happening at the moment. We have a lot of political discussions. Due to that, the currency fluctuates, and we get a lot of other uncertainties, and the UK economy, for that reason, I think, suffers.
It's very difficult for Joe Public, isn't it, to be watching these politicians, our leaders on TV, hearing them on the radio in the interviews. You've got real heavyweights out there with completely differing views. I was watching a programme the other evening and Ken Clarke was on, and of course he's very pro-Europe. He wants to be in. He sees it as being disastrous if we should leave, and of course he's going to put all his weight, and there's quite considerable weight behind it to move that process forward and to convince people that we've made the wrong decision.
Yes, well, I think at the moment the PM and everybody around there have said Brexit means Brexit. So I think there's no question about that there's going to be a Brexit. I know, or we read the papers and you see that obviously certain politicians and flanks try to bring it in that we need an act of Parliament in order to trigger Article 50 and then maybe change the decision really. So they're hoping perhaps that they can say let's not have a Brexit. But I think Again, it is politics, I suppose, but I think that could be very difficult. I don't see personally that happening.
From where you're sitting and your different regional offices around Europe, and also the fact that you come from Sweden as well, so you see different circumstances. You're maybe looking at it through a different telescope than, shall we say, I'm looking at it, or even our UK politicians are looking at it. If we're looking at the experiment as an experiment, the European trading community, is there the danger that that is actually heading for a disaster, whether we're in it or not?
It's a difficult question to answer, but it might be. I think this is my personal opinion, but it might be. This could be the first step of the unraveling, at least of the political part of it, if we don't talk about the free movement of goods, services, capital and workers. So if we talk about the political experience, yes, it could maybe things happening in the future where it's going to unravel a bit. If I put on my hat as a Swede for a minute, obviously we needed you guys or us in that sense in the European Union. So Sweden's probably going to have a bit more problem when we negotiate with the rest of European Union when the UK is gone.
Because Sweden really, to a certain extent, is kind of that is one particular model, isn't it? So you've got a trading agreement with Sweden at the moment, but you've also got the movement, the free movement of people.
I think if we're going to go in to look at different models and what can happen when Brexit actually happens. So if what the politicians said or what the PM has said, she's going to trigger Article 50 by March 2017. As I said, there's a case in at the moment discussing whether we need an act of parliament in order to actually trigger Article 50. I think that's a lot of politics as well. So if we just assume that Article 50 will be triggered or by March 2017, probably not before that, then we'll have another 2 years after that for all the EU states to agree a leaving agreement with the UK. If they don't agree anything within the next 2 years, then we'll be automatically will be removed from the EU, or rather we don't have to follow the treaties. And then we come into, well, what's the deal going to look like then?
Well, what we'll do, we'll talk about the different looks of the deals. Do you think that the mistakes have been made by leaving that decision process, by putting these long delays in? Because it seems that by putting it in now, if we're not looking at a decision till March to trigger it, it's giving everybody else the opportunity to take the platform and say all the reasons why it shouldn't be triggered or why we should stay in. And as I said previously, I alluded to Ireland, where Ireland went through a process of, they had a vote, a democratic vote. It was not the right answer that the government wanted. So what they did, they voted again. And they kept voting until they got the right answer. Is there not a danger that we could be railroaded into doing the same thing? Yes,
I think politically there is a danger that at least some politicians today are trying to do that. Absolutely. And especially with this case, whether we need an act of parliament in order to trigger Article 50. If that would be successful, we could, or certain part of the position could try to go down the road, absolutely. So there is a risk of that. I don't think, however, because the PM have strongly said that Brexit means Brexit and they will leave. So I don't think that we're going to be able to vote again or they're going to change that one way or another. I think it is a Brexit. So the question is, what kind of deal are we going to have? And ideally, I think you're right, it would have been great if we could decide the deal beforehand and then we knew exactly what to vote on. And we know what deal we would have. But obviously that would require some discussions with EU first, and that's not very easy to do before we have a vote. It's in any deal you do as well, it's very difficult to tell you exactly what I'm thinking and what I would be happy with before we actually come to an agreement. That's putting the cards on the table.
But of course some of the politicians want to do that. They want everything to be in the open. They want the rhetoric to be open. Tell me, in this game of cards, what you're holding. I actually really want to know before we go into the deal. And this seems ridiculous, what we're asking for. And these are our political elite that are doing this.
So I think that's the difficulty here. I mean, one side of me as a lawyer, in any kind of negotiations you have, obviously you don't want to show any cards. You want to wait until the very last minute. So in that sense, you wouldn't want you wouldn't want anything really to be discussed in Parliament, because that's giving our hand to the other politicians. And at the moment, they are looking at that hand, especially Germany and France, and really trying to figure out how they best can some say humiliate UK, but also the best deals they can get.
But they too are in a dangerous political situation. I don't want this programme to come over that we are biased one way or the other. I mean, what we're trying to do here is, like so many other programmes, we're trying to be rational about the situation that we find ourselves in. You know, democracy has said that the people of this country want to leave the EU. That's what democracy has said.
Yes.
Democracy, the word is spoken, and you know what we're now talking about is going against that democratic process, isn't it?
Yes, if we would go down the way, I feel that if we go down the route of discussing it too much in Parliament, and the politicians would have an opportunity to actually say, no, we're not going to leave. That's not listening to the people, I would say.
What about the likes of Germany, France, the Dutch in Holland and Spain as well? I mean, all these, they've all got their own individual problems, and there are some. The Italians are talking about losing, or would like a vote to leave the euro. I mean, it is in a bit of turmoil, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely.
I mean, as I said, you guys must be rubbing your hands together.
Yes, in a way, but I think there's a lot of political discussions at the moment, and not perhaps the hardcore legal issues on the implication on SMEs. I think that's where I'm coming, and that's only going to be. I think the SMEs and your listeners will have to properly look at their own business. They should probably do it today, but actually, once we know what kind of deal we're going to have, that's only when you're actually going to know what's going to happen.
We're going to talk about maybe some of what we should be doing as a business, and what we should also be looking at, the kind of deals that could be just around the corner. Because remember, what this is all about is about those trading agreements that are going to be there. We've got more to come. It's a fascinating subject. Hope you're going to stay with us here on Business Connections Live. Christian, it is really, really interesting, and I think we walk a tightrope during this programme, because there is always this danger that we will sound like that we are being, regardless of our personal views, that we mustn't have a bias one way or the other. So we stand back and we look. But it must be very difficult for you as barristers, solicitors to also be that neutral too.
It is. I mean, it's a very hot topic. It's a very sensitive topic, and a lot of people have a lot of feelings about it, no doubt. And I suppose you're right as well, in the sense that we actually don't know what's going to happen. I wish I could say legally exactly what will happen, but the truth is we don't really know.
Nobody knows.
No.
And we'll be talking a little bit more about that as the programme progresses. Christian Barham, he's a partner with EBL Miller Rosenfalk. We're talking about the triggering of Article 50 on this edition of Business Connections Live. Last week's show was a real cracking show. We talked to Ginny Carter, the author maker, about writing a business book. Every SME, every entrepreneur, I mean, how many times do you go to meetings and you walk in there and the person who is speaking, doing the keynote, will actually have one of their books sitting there on the table? But how do you go about actually doing that? How do you go about writing your business book? How do you get what's in here down onto a piece of paper? It can be very difficult. The nice thing about what Ginny does, Ginny can either coach you, mentor you, or she can write the book for you. She will come in, she will interview you, she will get the essence of the book, and then she will effectively write the book for you, and that allows you to become a published author. I mean, how many people must have done that in the past, where it's just really getting the thoughts down there? You may not be very eloquent when it comes to the way you write, but by having somebody like Ginny Carter as part of your team, that really is going to make things a lot easier for you. It's a great show. If you've always thought to yourself, yes, there is a book inside of me, but I don't know even how to start, it's the programme that you should be watching. It was a good show. If you've missed it, then I do suggest you go to businessconnectionslive.com and watch the entire programme. But if you just want a bit of a tease, here's what happened on last week's edition of Business Connections Live. On today's show, we're going to be talking about writing business books. Now, if you're a coach, a consultant or speaker, maybe an expert in anything that you do, then having a book raises you above your competition. It kind of just makes you a little bit different. The number of speakers that I have met recently, when I say speakers, I mean public speakers, who are going out at the moment and they have their own business book, it's just a phenomenon at the moment. Now, joining me in the studio today is Ginny Carter. She is the author maker.
Many experts, speakers, coaches, consultants are all wanting to write their own book because they want to share all of that fantastic learning skills and information it's in their head. It's never been easier to get a book out there than it is today with all of the new options we have with publishing. But I always think it's still not any easier to actually write the right book and to write a good book. If you've got an important set of ideas that you want to put across in a book, that you don't have to go to a traditional publisher and jump through lots of hoops to get your book out there, although that's still a very valid option for many authors. But I think people are more calling it self-publishing now. But I do see it as part of my job to help them to get the book that is going to work for them. I mean, there's no point them paying me to write a book that's not the right book. So I see part of my role really is to be on the reader's side, to help them realise how the ideas they've got in their head are going to relate to their readers, and some of those ideas their readers might not be interested in. It's to think about, well, what is it my readers are going to get out of it? What is it for me that I want to get out of it? Is it to get more consultancy work? Is it to gain more speaking engagements? Is it to just help people? Is it to leave a legacy? Is it to sell my online programme? And all of these are very worthwhile aims for a book, but I think until you know which of those is most important to you, it's difficult to then make any other decisions about your book. Sometimes people have had a go at writing a book themselves and have only got so far and need help. Other times they may have other materials such as blogs or online training courses or videos of talks they've given that can also be used as the raw material for a book. I would say before you actually write a word, there's quite a few stages to go through. One is what I talked about before about deciding what it is you want to get out of this book. What is it you want to achieve with it? What do you want to achieve for yourself and your business, and what do you want to achieve for your readers? The outline at its very top level is really a table of contents, just like when you open up a book and you see a list of chapters. That's what your outline is. But then once you've got your top level outline, you need to just start fill that out, flesh that out, and at this stage very much just bullet points, points that you want to make. You're not writing anything at this stage in any depth. Once you've got your points down for each chapter and you know roughly what you want to say in each chapter, then now's the time when you can actually just start writing. And this is the point at which a lot of people start, and
never finish.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, but the wise author has done all that other work beforehand. We use a different part of our brain for creating than we do for editing. Creating is very much a right brain activity, and editing is all about being judgmental about what we've written, and the two don't work very well together, so it's usually best to separate them into two different processes. We do have to kind of be realistic and realise that there is a certain amount of heft in a book of a certain length. That if you want a book to build your expertise, build your authority within your market, then you do have to have a book that is of a reasonable length, because there's a certain amount of reputation that goes with that. Well, I'm Ginny Carter, the author maker. And I would say the three key takeaways are: the first one is to really plan your book at the beginning. Know why it is you're writing your book. What is it you want for your readers, and what is it you want for you? And just really get clear on that before you go any further, because all of the other questions you have about your book will be answered by those questions that you've asked yourself at the beginning. The second thing is to really focus on your readers. Your readers are the ones that you're writing this book for. It's not really for you, it's for them. And sometimes when you're not quite sure about what to write or how to write it, thinking about what your readers would appreciate will be the easiest way of coming to an answer to that. And then thirdly, if you're struggling with this process, just get some help. There's lots of different kinds of help out there. It might be a ghostwriter, it might be a writing coach, but equally it could be an editor, a proofreader, a cover designer, a publisher. There are so many people out there who are there to help you make your book a reality, and just don't feel that you have to do it all on your own.
Absolutely fantastic show, so do not miss out on that. And by the way, if you'd like a show like that about your business, we do that too. We are big, it says in inverted commas, in internal communications, employee engagement. And if you've got that as an issue within your organisation, and let's face it, over the coming months, it's going to get more and more difficult. You're going to have to get out there, you're going to have to tell your employees maybe the impact of what Article 50 is going to have on their jobs, how processes are going to change, and maybe the best medium for doing that, not only writing it, putting it in memos, tweeting them, social mediaing it, is put together a compelling video, put it on the website. You can actually tell your customers what your business is doing to make certain that it's going to be successful through the instigation of Article 50. If you'd like more details on that, just drop us an email. Here's the email address. It is studio@businessconnectionslive.com. If you'd like to have a bit of a chat, we've also got a great app that you can put together as well, particularly for a workforce. If you've got maybe anywhere between sort of 500, 3,000 workforce, even bigger than that, and you're looking for an app that would deliver key messages to your teams out there, then have a word with us. You can give us a call on 01784 256 777. You can follow our stream of consciousness here from Business Connections Live. See what our guests are saying prior to the show and post-show as well by simply going to BCL Business TV. And don't forget, leave a comment on any of those channels, including our YouTube channel and also our Facebook channel as well. And we're seeing fantastic response. If you are a business and you're not using Facebook Live at the moment, then I do suggest that you have a look at our channel. We're getting a phenomenal results from using Facebook Live. And if you'd like to find out how your business could be doing that, then get in touch with us here at Business Connections Live. We'd love to hear from you, and we can have a bit of a chat on how to get your message out there to your prospective clients and your workforce as well. You're watching Business Connections Live. Joining me in the studio today is Christian I'm going to get it right this time, Bahram. But it's the J has got the two umlas above it, hasn't it?
That's right.
That makes it a little bit tricky for us.
Just to throw you off, yes.
Yeah, just to throw us off there. He's a partner with EDL Miller Rosenfeld. Okay, we've worked our way through the smoke and mirrors that seems to be going on at the moment when it comes to the instigation. We've talked about the fact that maybe March is when Theresa May is actually going to press the button.
Yes.
But there's a lot of time between now and then.
Yes. And even afterwards, I would say.
And the discussions are not going to be easy, are they?
No.
What do you think are the typical models that potentially we're going to be trying to negotiate?
Yes. So I think that generally speaking, there's three models. You have the Swiss model, the Switzerland. They have a free trade agreement. Included in there as well is Iceland, Liechtenstein, and Norway, and then Switzerland. And they have a free trade agreement with the EU. It means that they lose the access to the four freedoms, so no access to the internal market. So that's one possibility, that we end up with something like Switzerland.
Switzerland, just remind us, the population of Switzerland is?
I'm not sure how many.
It's nowhere near the 68 million of the UK, fifth largest economy.
Yeah.
So that's
same thing with Norway and Liechtenstein, obviously a lot smaller, and Iceland as well. So we're much bigger than those players. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So we've got the Swiss model.
Yes.
What's the next model?
The other model would be, a lot of people call it the Norwegian model. So that would be that we still be a part of the European Economic Area, the EEA. We have access to the four freedoms: goods, services, capital, and workers. So free movement of goods, services, capital, and workers. Norway, though, they do pay the membership fee, if we call it that, to the EU, and I think we wouldn't want to pay that anymore. But that's the other possible model, so the Norwegian model. That's staying relatively close to the European Union, I would say, just like Norway are today. They're not in EU, but they have a lot of the benefits, but they pay for it as well. The third model would be the World Trade Organization, essentially that we don't have any agreement with EU, like the Swiss model or Norwegian model. It would also probably be called the default model. I mean, it would be the default model, because once we triggered Article 50, and the PM said it's going to happen by March 2017, EU and UK then have 2 years in order to agree how we're going to leave, or the deal going forward. And if we can't agree anything during that 2-year period, keeping in mind that all the member states of EU needs to agree to it, then we...
Well, hang on.
Yes.
Let's not just go across it. Bearing in mind that all the member states, they probably couldn't actually agree on what everybody wanted to drink, could they, quite frankly, if they were going out for a boozy night in the middle of Brussels at the end. They wouldn't even be able to split the bill at the end of a meal, would they?
That's right. They'd probably give it to the UK representative that's there at the moment.
So the situation we've got is that at the end of the 2 years, bearing in mind that everybody has to agree, is there any extension, or do we just walk away from it?
There can be an extension as well, but then everybody has to agree to that as well. So catch-22 there in a way. No, it is real. That's when it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. This could again go on forever. But if we don't agree on anything, and they can't agree on extension either, which I think there's a real risk of.
Do we just walk away?
Then we just walk away, and then that is the third model, the World Trade Organization. Then we're a member of, we have to adhere to the World Trade Organization, WTO. So essentially then we become like any non-EU
is that
country.
Is that politically and economically, is that Armageddon for the UK, or is it effectively Armageddon for Europe? Because this is going to become very destabilising, isn't it, for Europe? We've got Germany that's going to be in turmoil. By the time that we're looking at this, if we're looking at March of next year, we've got the German elections taking place. Merkel, from the general press at the moment, is on her way out potentially. She's not doing particularly well. We've got this unrest taking place in Italy with the fact that they're euro. Are they talking about going back to the lira again?
Maybe.
Just brilliant, isn't it? Do you want to be a member of that? Is the question.
Of the lira? No, I don't think so. But yes, no. So I'm absolutely right. I think that's probably the biggest question mark on what would happen, because then we don't have any, not even a small agreement with European Union at all. So that probably throws up the most questions. But it also might be the cleanest way of leaving.
What about the implication implementing European law? Because currently our statute books are covered in law that's been made within the... I was told earlier by actually one of our team here, referred to it as the European Political Union. But those statutes are sitting on as law within our own country.
That's right.
So, and I've read somewhere that as we leave Europe, to continue using those laws is, in inverted commas, illegal anyway. They've got to be ratified, haven't they?
Well, if we... there's various ways you can look at this. Let's say we trigger in March 2017 Article 50. We don't come to an agreement, so by March 2019 we have left. What happens with the laws in here, as you say then? Well, we have acts in the UK which are taken from European law, European directives, and we've implemented them here. They are going to stay the same way they are. The law is going to stay the way the law is today until the UK then changes those acts. So that's probably going to take another few years if we change the law, depending on which model, how the agreement with the EU ends up being. It might be that we actually, in some respects, will mirror the law they have in the in the EU. So the EU directives will actually implement very similar to those, will shadow those directives, and we'll have similar law here. Or the UK might change it altogether. But on the day that we leave, so to speak, 2 years after triggering Article 50 most likely, then the same law will be valid the day after of the acts that we have implemented in the UK. So it's only after that, once we left, that our legislators will make up new law, change the law with regards to those things. So you have agency regulations, for example.
Which kind of leads us nicely into what businesses should be doing right now. If you're a small to medium scale enterprise, an SME, even if you're a middle to large organisation with their headquarters here in the UK, employing UK people, right now, what should they be considering and what should they be doing? I
think not panicking.
Don't panic, Mr. Mannering.
No panic, exactly. No panic, calm. If we think about it practically, nothing's going to happen until Article 50 is triggered. We have all the political discussions, how that's going to be done perhaps. And most likely nothing's going to happen 2 years after triggering Article 50 either, which means we have realistically 2.5 years to actually unthink something will happen. And when I say something happen, I'm talking more of the legal issues here.
There's going to be fallout, isn't there?
Because today we have the currency fluctuating, we have all kinds of problems for people who do business abroad at the moment due to the political issues discussed. But what people should do, I think, today, starting today, not panicking about it, but starting today, is to look at your business, look what could be affected within your business. And I'm then thinking about the contracts you have with suppliers, customers, clients in the EU. You look at maybe tax issues if you have subsidiaries or holding companies abroad. You look at data protection rules that might change. You look at your trademarks, whether they're protected EU trademarks or whether you have UK trademarks. How's that going to affect? You can look at disputes. Do you have any contracts, any disputes, any claim against you or claims you want to make? How's that going to affect after we have a Brexit? Employment issues. Do you have European citizens that you've employed in here? In the UK, do they need visa permits, etc.? Is that going to affect your business? Perhaps you deal with public procurement with EU. Is that going to affect you? You look at product safety, which is mostly EU directives. Is that going to affect your products that you make? And insurance. If you have a EU insurance, for example, is that going to affect your business? Do you need to have a specific UK and a separate EU insurance, perhaps? That's just a very brief highlight, and we can go into more details to talk about those. But those are the things I think people should, or businesses should, maybe appoint a person representative for that, have a look in, ask questions about
kind
that.
of a czar, a senior management position.
Yes,
yeah.
yes, and maybe even a consultant or something you call in to do that, and ask a lot of questions and try to assess what could be relevant
so
to your
all
business.
intents and purposes,
a bit of a due diligence.
I was going to say that this is due diligence
Yes.
on leaving and how it's going to affect your business.
Yes.
So this, if you're in mergers and acquisitions, this is probably the way. If you've probably got all the expertise and
That's right.
experience that
That's
you
right.
need at the moment to actually move that forward. What are our European counterparts? What are they doing? So at the moment, what would you say the German car manufacturers may well be thinking or doing? Will they be doing exactly the same again, doing their due diligence on the possibility of the UK, well, of the definite, we think
Yes.
right now,
Yes.
of the UK leaving
Yes.
the EU?
I presume they are. They should. In any event, they should do the very same thing. I mean, if you have manufacturing in UK or in Euro and you import or export, it's going to be relevant with the tax and duties and levies. It's going to happen. You have the currency fluctuations as well. So companies in the UK and in the rest of Europe need to assess and do a little bit of a due diligence what will happen after there actually is a Brexit.
The recommendation,
so it should do the same thing.
The recommendation from you, and just very briefly, and we'll talk in more detail, but the recommendation is what? When it comes, if you have overseas territories, if you have offices around Europe, what's beginning to seem the best possible way? Or are we just too soon in the process to figure that out?
I think it would be very diligent, and I think it would be proper to start looking at it today. So when the Brexit is there, we're very near it, it doesn't overwhelm you. And it could have been things you could have prepared in advance. So I think start today to do a little bit of a due diligence, look into what could affect you. Do you have suppliers, customers, manufacturing abroad? Do you have a lot of clients there? Your contracts, are they under English law or are they under another EU law perhaps? I think do a bit of due diligence and look into that. I think that should start today.
All right. Christian Barham is my guest today. He's a partner with EBL Miller Rosenfalk. Very interesting programme. The triggering of Article 50. We now know it's going to be March, but the big political heavyweights are out there at the moment. They're trying to put their own spin on things. We've got more to come on this edition of Business Connections Live. Hope you're finding today's programme as fascinating and as interesting as I am. You alluded a moment or so ago, Christian, to the trade agreements that are out there as well, and also the finances too. How long do you think, in your mind's eye, are we going to be going through this up and down, this movement of the pound? I can't remember what it is at the moment. I think it's around about 118 this morning against the dollar as far as the pound's concerned, and we're getting very close to this, 1 for 1 as far as the euro is concerned.
Yes.
And this is the pound against a currency that is actually relatively unstable.
Yes.
That's a bit of a worry, isn't it? Is that because of the political heavyweights that are out there? Is that the European politics
I think so.
I think
so. I think it's the uncertainty. It's the uncertainty we don't know. The politicians are putting various spins on it. I think that's the main reason, really. I mean, the fact is that the market don't know what deal or what model the Brexit is going to take. So they can't react to that because they don't know yet. Nobody knows yet. So it is really the political turmoil, and everybody thinks it's a bit of gloom and doom and so on. I think that's what the market is responding to.
There's nothing like a bit of gloom and doom to sell newspapers. A recent guest on the programme, we had Gabby Buck Gabriel Buck, Managing Director of GKB Ventures, on how to gain access to export finance. Now, of course, obviously this may well change over the coming months, but SMEs need funding to grow their exports and to manage payment risk against their buyers. Why then do so many SMEs have their export sales financing turned down? Now, that was a really interesting program. Now, of course, things are moving on, and I remember at the time when Gabby was in the studio, he was very pro that he's an ex-banker. He was very pro that we stay in the EU. That was his position at the time. Be interested to find out actually what his view is as the months have gone on. On the program, he looked at the main challenges of getting export finance, what the solutions were that were out there, and how you as an SME should actually start the process of getting your export finance. Great show once again. Just to give you a bit of this really is a real taste and some great advice. We may have a word with Christian on how he feels perhaps maybe the whole area of finance and getting export finance and where you get it from is going to be changing over the coming months. But just to give you a bit of a taste of what Gabby said, here he is on a previous edition of Business Connections Live.
My name is Gabriel Buck. I'm the Chairman and Managing Director of GKB Ventures. I'm an independent consultant looking to support SMEs in terms of their exports and their export credit growth. Exporting is for a lot of companies part of their DNA from day one. Do not be disheartened if you are rejected from the banks. The banking market is much more fragmented. So my key words of advice to you is 1, pre-position. 2, make sure that the advice that you're getting fits your own particular objectives as a business. 3, make sure that your propositions are in the language that the banks understand. 4, persevere and follow through. The market is huge across the world, and for those companies that are exporting and it's part of their DNA, the successes that they get make them much stronger credits.
That's Gabby Buck talking about how you should go about looking after your export finances and where you can get it from. And a really good show. If you want to find all the shows, simply just go to our website at businessconnectionslive.com. You'll find them there. There's over 200 hours of great business programs, great advice if you want to find out more. By the way, do leave a comment if you're enjoying the program, regardless of where you're watching this. If you're watching it on YouTube, leave a comment below. If you disagree with everything we said, if you think that that interviewer is somewhat biased, leave it there. Leave a comment. This is free speech. Say what you want to say. If you think that Christian is talking nonsense, then just say Christian's talking nonsense. The whole idea of this is to open the debate, is to get people talking about it, get people understanding what is actually happening around them. It was interesting, I think, leading up to the referendum, talking to my father. He's 93. He's a lovely bloke most of the time. Nice guy. But talking to him, he found it very, very confusing. Whether he should be in, whether he should be out, what he was voting for, whether it was about immigration, whether it was not about immigration, whether it was about trade, whether it was not about trade. I mean, the trade bit actually for him didn't really come into it. And he even said to me, at 93, it's not really going to affect me. It's going to affect, well, probably your children's children. That's the people who are going to be picking up the pieces afterwards. So, do watch those programs. They're there to help. They're there to actually give you some advice when it comes to your individual businesses. By the way, you can watch us also on iTunes. Just a quick plug for iTunes. Go to our iTunes website and leave a comment about the program. We'd love your feedback. It's very easy to do that. All you got to do is just click on the link on the website that says View in iTunes. Just click on that there. That'll take you to this page in iTunes that asks you for your ratings and your reviews. Say something nice when you press this, click it, and then go, yep, love the show, love the guests, really helpful, and then give us a 5-star review as well. That will help other iTunes users as well to find the program, and we'd really appreciate that. In fact, the downloads on that on a regular basis are quite phenomenal. My guest on today's show is Christian Barham. He's a partner with EBL Miller Rosenfeld, and we're talking about the triggering of Article 50 and what it means to you. Just a moment ago, we were talking about the value. This morning, when we're doing the programme, $1.22 against the dollar. This is for the pound. The euro, £1.12p. And what was it at its highest? Huge amount. FTSE's up, though. FTSE's up. And this is the thing that's interesting. The alternative FTSE's up, the FTSE's up.
Yep.
So it's only the value against the other currencies at the moment. And so this is political spin going on, isn't it?
I think
because the real people, the real workers, the businesses, investment is still there, and business is just getting on with it.
Yeah, and I think if I may say, it might be that the whole Brexit discussions and so on have not been led by the business as much. I think it's been very politically led. It might have been better if it was driven by the business and the commercial reasons behind it.
But even the CBI dipped their toe in, didn't they? And they were in favour of staying within the EU. That was their position. And in fact, you know, there was quite a lot of large businesses. In fact, we haven't seen the Armageddon even now that everybody expected.
No, I don't think so either. I think, as I said before, it's a lot of panicking, a lot of worry, but a lot of it is down to political spin.
All right, so now let's just go back to, because there's a number of topics that are going to be very important to actually cover.
Yes.
So we've been talking about going into business, we're maybe setting up a czar within your organisation who is going to be effectively doing due diligence on the exit process, because they're going to be doing that in Europe anyway. What other considerations do we need to bring into mind?
So I think a good thing to point somebody, as you said, then looking at various things, I think there's a lot of common sense. Really, obviously, being a solicitor, you should have a solicitor come in, but I don't think it's absolutely necessary. It's a lot of common sense.
Another bottle of champagne.
Yeah, exactly. to try to flag up the issues that might be relevant down the road. You know, trigger in March 2017. Probably we're going to leave then in 2019 March. So we're talking a few years down the line. But what could affect your business? If we look at contracts then that you have, you might want to look at force majeure clauses. Would it say that the agreement is terminated if there is a Brexit? The general consensus is I doubt it would cover that. But you look at the term of your agreement, because if you have an agreement that lasts for 10 years and you can't get out of it, and you haven't really dealt with levies and duties as part of the price of your product, or taxes applicable, what it might be in the future, you might be in for a bit of a surprise. So you might want to be able to terminate that contract earlier. Same thing if you want to renew the contract, you might want to be a bit careful on how long you renew it for. Maybe a few years at a time now.
Will there be conditions that businesses will say, well, look, the conditions have now changed considerably from when we negotiated this contract.
Yes.
The terms have now really changed, and we do need to renegotiate. Will businesses, do you feel, be in a position to actually to do that, or will they be stuck with what they've already got?
I think legally they would be most likely stuck with what they have. If they sign the agreement, it's a binding and valid agreement, they'll be stuck with that. But when it comes to renewal, which hopefully will be there within the next 3 years, or 2.5 years, there is something real to consider here, I think, to sit back and think about before you sign a new agreement. What happens with levies and duties and so on if you have agreements with suppliers abroad, because there will be effects on it. So I think it's more of nothing you can renegotiate today, perhaps, but something to be aware of when the time comes to renegotiate the agreement. Or if you have to get out of one, you might have to breach it. You might have to breach the agreement. It might be more beneficial.
But it may well be instigated by the receiving end, mightn't it? For instance, if you're in a European country and we are exporting to them, the levies that they may have to pay coming from us may actually make it the wrong deal for them.
Presumably they will be sitting there and doing the same thing. Absolutely. So I can see that a lot of agreements that go across the borders will have to be renegotiated and rethought about, especially when it comes to the costs and what currency you pay. Since we have the fluctuations today, if the currency and the price is in pound, well, maybe they want to have it in euro in the future, or vice versa. Something real to consider here. You also have to think about maybe choice of law. So today you might have English law, the Germans don't want to have that, they want to have German law in the agreement. So it comes down to, again, where it would be most beneficial for you, but also the other part, I suppose, where it would be most beneficial to sue each other, or put in a claim. So the contracts are one thing I would look into, how long they are, how you can terminate them, the different terms as in price and currency and so on. It's quite important to look into that. I don't think you can do anything today, but to be prepared for when you renew it and actually think about before you sign a new agreement, really have a think about this. Probably have a bit of a shorter agreement in the first place, so we can see what happens in 2019 when we leave. That's contracts, that's one part of it. You also have then tax. So today there is no you have something called the parent subsidiary directive. So if you have a subsidiary anywhere else in Europe, you pay dividend up to the UK company, there is essentially no withholding tax, no tax on the dividend. That might change if we're not part of the EU anymore. So you might have to consider your legal structures if you have subsidiaries or holding companies elsewhere in the EU. You will also have to look at funding. For example, we talked about export funding earlier. But if you have funding, maybe you received, I read in the papers, the Queen, or is it Charles, that received some EU funding, for example. Those things might change as well, presumably.
How is she going to make ends meet?
How is she going to make ends meet? That is a very tough question. So that's something to have a think about and look into. Data protection is another issue. Today you can essentially transfer data freely through the EU. If we are no longer part of the EU, presumably you need to have some agreement to put things in place on how you transfer the data to the rest of the EU. It might be that the UK will follow the same standard of protection as the EU has, and it might not be a big issue, but there's something to consider, especially depending on what your business is. If you're an online software business, that might be very relevant.
Do you think there is a danger of organisations and countries cutting their nose off to spite their face, in as much as just being awkward to it? Yeah. Businesses just want to do business, surely, yes. Don't they? They're not really driven politically, are they? No,
with the risk of being a lawyer and saying this, but I think the business people are probably the most sensible people and will find a way around it all. Very pragmatic. Businesses tend to be very pragmatic. People want to buy, and more importantly, people want to sell, and you find a way to do it.
Do you think we as a nation forget the power, in inverted commas, I use it advisedly, but the power that we have, our purchasing power that we actually still have? Yeah. Because, as we said, but 68 million, that's a big market, isn't it?
It's a big market. Being born in Sweden as well, if I say put on the Swedish hat, then of course Sweden would love to do business or keep doing business with England. Very easy market to get into. You have to speak English. Most Swedes do. A lot of people in Europe speak English. So it is a big market, and it's a very easy first market, maybe before you go to the US. So I think maybe we should not be so scared, because people still going to want to do business with us. The French and Germans, they're still going to want to sell. The salesperson in French and Germany still want to make their bonus and commission on what they sell. Is my personal belief. But I think businesses will still do business. Do you think?
It's a lot of people seem to put the whole thing down to immigration. And so if we take the word immigration away from it, but the fact of open borders. Yes. I was over in Calais on my way to Brussels actually a couple of months ago, and the thing there is that you travel from Calais to Brussels on a road. You could tie the steering wheel steady, and it's a straight line. Yes. You have no indication that you're crossing borders. That's right. And it seems that it's a European mentality that to be borderless. Because you can stand in some places in Europe and see 3 different countries from that one spot. To come to the UK, you either get on a boat or you get on a train.
That's right.
You are crossing a physical barrier to get to the country. Yes. And is it because of that mentality that there's always going to be this difference between the them and us? Because remember, you're a them, aren't you?
Yeah, no, exactly. At that point, I'm them. Yeah. Yes, it might be, and since you haven't gone into the Schengen, where you actually have to show your passport and so on ID when you travel into the UK, and you're an island, as you say, there might be a bit of a different mentality compared to the rest of continental Europe, where it is, as you say, easy to travel between the countries, and it's just seen as one big country, and especially with the difficulties with the large immigration that we have, not the immigration per se, but the difficulty to deal with it with the different countries. It obviously puts economical strains on the various European countries where the immigrants come in, and the question is how can we use that?
Because you were saying with Sweden, for instance, you were saying to me earlier on that there are you gave a phenomenal number of immigrants that are in the country that are unaccounted for.
Yes, loads of immigrants have come in and they haven't actually accounted for them. So we then, Sweden, putting on my Swedish hat again, obviously there's going to be some problems when they're not registered and we don't know who they are and what they're doing. Then to turn them into, how should we call it, law-abiding, tax-paying citizens, it's probably not easy because they're out of the system. So you have that issue. But that's, again, a lot of political issues, I think, when it comes to the SMEs and the businesses. I think they find ways to deal with this very pragmatically and ways around it.
So the message at the moment is stay calm.
Yes.
And carry on.
Yes.
Do your due diligence. We're going to look at some of the other impacts as well that we should be aware of in just a few moments' time, the other things that should come into consideration. But we've got a time scale. In 10 seconds, do you think we've got enough nous in this country, enough expertise to actually unpick the situation? Yes or no?
Yes.
We have.
I think.
Does it matter, do you think, if 27 odd countries agree or not when it comes to the fact that we're leaving?
I don't think everybody will agree in any event. So I think we're going to head for the default model, if you see. It's going to be very difficult, I think. Canada's tried for 7 years, I think it is now, and it's the Walloons in Belgium that didn't agree to it at the moment, so they haven't reached a deal. It's difficult.
Either they want to trade or they don't. We won't eat their chocolates if they don't want to trade with us. That's the way things are going to be. My guest on today's show is Christian Barham. He's a partner with EBL Miller Rosenfalk. A fascinating show. We're looking at the triggering of Article 50 on this edition of the programme. And we've got some key takeaways for you in just a few moments' time on this edition of Business Connections Live. Listen, I hope you're enjoying today's show. It's been really a real insight, and we've got a few more little pieces in the last 12 minutes to actually talk about in just a few moments' time. Don't forget, do leave your comments, and we can even pass them on to Christian, and maybe he will correspond as well on our Twitter feed or whatever about the different aspects of what we've been discussing today. By the way, if you think he's doing a good job, there's seen no training at all. He's just, because he's part of your training to be a solicitor barrister is advocacy, isn't it?
Some of it, yes.
So you are trained to stand up there and to present and to get the letter of the law over, aren't you?
Yes, that's right, that's right.
But how would you react if someone was to come to you with a camera and they would point it in your face and you had to talk intelligently about your business? How would you react? Would you be good? Would you be able to get the key points over? Would you be able to sell in maybe that 10, 15 seconds your business, your ideals, your company philosophy? What about a radio microphone? Would you be able to give a coherent comment? Somebody was talking about Mr. Juncker when he was approached by the BBC, in fact, and the BBC approached Mr. Juncker and said, "So you've been talking to Theresa May, tell me how the discussions go." He looked at the interviewer and went, "Pah!" about our Prime Minister. Now, what he was doing, he wasn't just insulting Theresa May, but he was insulting the nation. Dangerous situation. Say you were to do that without thinking in your business. That's why we run a course called How to Handle the Media. It's a one-day workshop. You come into the studio, you and maybe some of your colleagues as well. Up to 6 people can be on the workshop, and we take you through the entire process of how to deliver the camera, how to be interviewed on camera, how to be interviewed on the radio, how to handle a telephone phone-in, how to stand by the roadside and to do one of those vox pops that you so often see where you're asked for your comments for a minute, how you go about handling that. It's a great day. We turnkey it especially for your business. We take your business, your corporate PR releases, and we turn those into questions. The programme is, to all intents and purposes, all about you. James Griffin from Iris Software brought his team in for a day, and here's what he said after our one-day course on how to handle the media.
I'm James Griffin from Iris Software, and my team have just completed the How to Handle the Media workshop. It was a really great course, it was really fun, and it was a really unique way for them to polish their presentation skills and learn how to answer difficult questions under pressure. So I'd highly recommend this to anybody that values those skills and really wants a great day out with their team.
If you'd like more details on how to handle the media, get in touch with us here at Business Connections Live. The address is studio@businessconnectionslive.com. Or if you want, you can give us a call on 01784 256 777. If you want to follow our stream of consciousness, then it's BCL Business TV. And don't forget, you can also watch the programmes on Facebook as well, for that matter. We're using Facebook Live. We're also on iTunes, Roku, Stitcher, and a whole host of other places where you can get the programme. You can either watch or listen to each and every show. Disagree or agree, it's all about debate and giving you some inside tracks, some inside information to make your business even better. You're watching Business Connections Live. My guest today is Christian Bartram. He is the partner with EBL Miller Rosenfeld. We kind of touched earlier on employees and
Yes.
how it's going to affect them.
Yes.
Employment law in the UK is a huge area. So how will it affect? I mean, coming out of one system, using another system, what are going to be the consequences, do you feel, of that?
Yeah. I think first and probably most important one is going to be employees that are non-UK, so EU employees coming into the UK. After we have a Brexit, after we left, most likely the non-UK, as myself being Swedish originally, will need some kind of permit, visa, something in order to stay and work in the UK. If you've been here for a certain amount of years, probably it's going to be a tick in the box exercise a bit, but it needs to be looked into for myself as well. How can I stay here and work?
Are you dual nationality? At the
No, so I'm only Swedish nationality.
You're Swedish, right?
So I would probably have to apply for permanent residence or something like that before the Brexit or afterwards. I don't see it's going to happen overnight either. But a real impact it could have on businesses then is if you have a lot of European employees, non-UK employees, just to make sure they can stay, they want to stay perhaps, giving all the political turmoil and so on. So you might have to incentivize them differently perhaps. So that's definitely one of the due diligence bullet points I would put on there, to say be aware of that if you have EU citizens employed in your company, to deal with that, put that down as a box to deal with. Then you have a lot of other things that might change as well. We have the working time regulations, 48-hour working week. We have the statutory rights as employees have over here. Some of it come from EU. So we might change those things here in the future. Relatively speaking, I think the UK law with regards to employees are relatively relaxed compared to some other countries in EU. But we might be even more relaxed afterwards. So I think that's nothing one can do anything about today or shortly.
But this is a whole issue, isn't it? That we're talking there about repealing laws, changing laws. Acts of Parliament are not something that happen tomorrow. Acts of Parliament that happen over a long period of time.
Yeah.
And they can be thrown out of the House. They don't get voted on. They can go on for years in some particular instances. So I mean, the downside of this, I suppose, is that we could all end up in a void, effectively, where we cannot move the situation forward.
No, I think practically we're going to have the law's going to stay the same as it is the day before we leave, the actual Brexit, and the day after, because we have acts in place. So the statutory rights that employees will have are still going to be there. But the thing that will no doubt change one way or another is the visa or permit that non-UK citizens will need in order to stay here and work. And you have the whole City of London, the banks, that's a lot of things they talk about losing all their forces, but you also have a lot of SMEs that have anything from factory workers to CFOs and so on that have EU citizens. So that's something to consider, that there might be a risk that some are leaving or have to leave, and they might want to put in application now, today, even to become permanent residents or something similar to stay.
So be aware, employment law, and be aware of the people who are effectively on your books at the moment that you are employing.
Yes. Maybe talk to them. Maybe they want to stay afterwards. Before it probably has been no issue for the company to actually look at what country they come from and what permits they need, because if you're in EU you don't really need any permit, but now it might be an issue. So something to think about.
Anything else do you think that we should be aware of within business?
Yeah, we highlighted some, the contracts, the tax, data protection, but another important one is also that you can look at in today is the trademark. So if you made an EU trademark application, or if you have an EU trademark, once we leave, Nobody knows what's going to happen there. Most likely, you're going to keep your EU trademark minus UK, and you're going to be given a specific trademark in the UK. So it's something to think about there, how you have protected your trademark, design rights and the like. If you have applied for a UK trademark today, or you have a UK trademark, maybe you want to put an application in quickly to get an EU trademark, because it might be easier to apply for the whole of EU now, because we know what the law is today, and it's not going to change as of today. It's going to take a few years. You might want to put in that application, but it's absolutely something to think about and consider as well. Employment, you had insurance, whether that's legal or not, but you might have insurances that cover the whole of EU. Since we have different regulations now, you might have to have a separate insurance in the UK and a separate one in the rest of the EU.
But the list is endless, isn't it? I mean, health and safety requirements across the EU and the UK, even right down to the basis of business drivers.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's as I said before, I think what businesses can do today is to sit down, keep calm, don't panic, and get on with business. But maybe do maybe do a little bit of a due diligence and come up with some issues that you need to be aware of.
Are we going to be beaten by a stick, do you think, to a certain extent? Are we going to be punished by the EU? Will they come back? Will they? Is this going to be? This isn't going to be a walk in the park, is it?
No, I don't think so. It's not a walk in the park at the moment.
It's not a walk in the park at the moment, but is it going to be made more difficult by the politicians flexing their muscles?
Yes, since neither you or I are a politician, I think we can say yes, the politicians going to create a little bit of problem, I think. And they are creating at the moment. I think at the end of it, business is going to come in and actually it's going to be fine for businesses when we know what we need to do, or when the businesses know what they need to do. They will deal with it swiftly. Normally that's how they do it, be pragmatic. But I think it's going to be a lot of turmoil until we get there, until we know what model we're going to have.
We are in, it's just been whispered to me, the chicken and the egg scenario at the moment, aren't we? Whichever comes first.
Yes.
It's been absolutely fascinating talking to you today. I found it really interesting. I think the thing that I've enjoyed about it is the fact that we try all the time to keep it relatively unbiased. But it does seem that the news isn't as dark, perhaps, as it's sometimes been portrayed by some of our political chattering classes. Yeah. We at the end of we've got to get through this regardless, haven't we? Yeah. Business has got to do business across the UK, and we'll just have to get on with it, whatever the struggles are that are thrown at us.
Keep calm, carry on. I think that's
a great carry on. We always invite our guests to give us the key takeaways, straight down camera number one, in fact. We always ask them to give us the key takeaways of the day, things that they should be aware of, that our viewers should be aware of, and in this particular case, perhaps maybe why they shouldn't be worrying quite so much about leaving the EU, or at least looking at a more I hesitate using the word more powerful, but a country that can actually fend for itself on its own, but still trade successfully with its business partners.
Yes.
So if you don't say who you are and where you're from, I'll let you pronounce your name this time. So say who you are and where you're from, the business you're from, and then those key takeaways. The airways are yours. So
this is Christian Björndrum from EBL Miller Rosenfelk. I'm a partner of the firm of solicitors. I would say, keep calm and carry on. I think there's a lot of political discussions at the moment on what will happen in the future. The truth is nobody really knows. There's going to be some time until something actually happens. The Article 50 is going to be triggered by March, the PM has said. After that, we'll probably have a period of 2 years to negotiate a deal. If we don't agree a deal, we'll leave automatically. I think what business should do in the meantime is they should do a bit of due diligence, look into their own business. You have contracts, trademarks, employees, you have tax issues, various issues that you need to look into that could be applicable or could be an opportunity or a threat in the future. And I think it's important to assess what they are today, so you're prepared.
Excellent. That's fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. I hope you found today's show fascinating. As Christian's alluded all the way through the programme too, this is a very difficult, because this is crystal ball stuff at the moment. We're trying to second guess what everybody else. We've got 27 odd countries in Europe at the moment. Some will vote yes, some will vote no. Maybe that is intrinsically the issue that Europe has got, that it cannot get a decision, a consensus of opinion right across the 27 countries, either one way or the other. We see it, dare I say this, we see it a little bit in Eurovision, where people's different loyalties lie and where the different blocks are. It's a bit like you've got a half a dozen of eggs, but one of the eggs is made of chocolate. The other 5 are eggs, but that chocolate one will always be a chocolate egg, and it will never be a real egg, you know. So you're always going to have these kind of differences there. So it's been a real fascinating insight into what's going on when it comes to what's going to happen to us as we take our businesses out of the EU once Article 50 is triggered. If you want to find out more about Christian and the organisation he works for, EBL Miller Rosenfeld, you can go to their website, very comprehensive website. Information is all on there telling you exactly what they do. Also, they run a very interesting blog as well. You can follow them on Twitter. You can also follow them as well on LinkedIn as well. Ranked in the Global Chambers 2016. I bet, was that a night of champagne?
That might have been it.
You weren't invited.
Oh, no, I'm not invited.
Really, if there was one last piece, I know you've kind of given it already, but if
Yes.
there's one last piece of advice you would say, and I know you said don't panic, but in 15 seconds.
No, I think don't panic, keep calm, carry on, do a bit of due diligence today, a bit of common sense.
Start now.
Start now, a bit of common sense. What could the implications be for you with regards to your business? And it's a bit of common sense to write up. Nothing will happen today, but what could there be in a few years' time?
And I suppose that's the words that we should actually leave you ringing in your ears with on today's programme, that the world doesn't stop, it isn't coming to an end, it isn't all over, not yet anyhow. I mean, the situation that we're in is that this is going to be absolutely doable. It's going to be tough, yes it is. It's going to be a rocky time as far as the pound and currencies are concerned. But we've been there before, we will survive. Some of us can remember 16% interest rates and what that was doing to our mortgages and our loans. You know, will it be ever as bad as that again? Who knows? Listen, I hope you've enjoyed today's show. Christian, thank you very much for being with us on today's programme.
Thank you, Steve.
And from the pair of us, thank you very much for watching. And it has been a fascinating show. I tell you what we'll do just before we leave you right now, we'll do a little bit of housekeeping as far as the show is concerned. So who have we got coming up in the near future? On next week's show, I guess it's going to be Ben Cha on goal setting. He's going to be with us on next week's program. We're looking forward to that. Goal setting, really important. We were talking today about the goal setting, and of course here's going to be an opportunity for you to find out the key things. This man, his last business that he sold, I think it was for £7 million. And he is a multiple business owner. We like this guy. Ben's going to be joining us next week on the programme. Also coming up on future programmes, Alison Hale from Oxford Professional Consulting, Jim McLaughlin, Managing Director of Axial, Nikki Creel's going to be back. She's got a great new book out at the moment. She's the author of Converting Conversions to Customers. That's the name of the book, incidentally. Antonio Falco, Neil Ackroyd, Mark Werrell from Motorsport, Sylvia Baldock will be joining us again, Deborah Hume, Ali Crump from A Drive Tech, Polly Buckland, to name but a few. She's from the Typeface Group. Jackie Jarvis, James Potter, the LinkedIn man, Tom Evans, author of Practical Mindfulness. There's a lot of great shows. If you want your business to be more effective, if you want your business to grow and to be better, I suggest you watch us live every Monday, either on YouTube or on Facebook Live if you want. Let's roll those credits and get out of here. From all the team here today, thank you very much for your company. Hope you found today's show useful and interesting. Till we do it all again next week, from Christian and myself, Steve Hyland, have a fantastic week. Until we do it all again next Monday. Bye for now. Bye-bye.